What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and I'm excited about this one today. I'm going to be hitting you guys with a double hero RB draft strategy video. In general, doing the draft strategy videos, whether it's a specific, strategy like this one, or platform-based, or even pick location, early, mid, late first round, these are my favorite videos to do throughout the offseason, so I am pretty excited about this one. Just to give you guys kind of an overview about double hero RB, if you're not super specific, these are kind of like the general guidelines, I would say. So I would say you're snagging two running backs probably through 3 rounds. You're trying to get two stud running backs to lead your team. That's why it's called double hero RB. I think you could extend this to the 4th round, but I would only be extending it to the 4th round if you're getting a value like someone who would be going in the first 3 rounds. The two guys that come to mind that maybe you could go in round 4 would be Ramondre Stevenson and Jahmyr Gibbs. There are going to be some platforms where Ramondre kind of slips. I believe ESPN, he goes like the 3-4 turn. I do categorize Ramondre Stevenson as someone you could use as a hero RB. And then Jahmyr Gibbs would be the other guy. But if you're going like round 4 Aaron Jones or round 4 Kenneth Walker, I don't really think those guys qualify. You're really trying to hit those high ceiling running backs in the first 2, 3, 4 rounds. And then in the middle rounds, you're trying to hammer out the wide receiver position. You're typically going to want wide receivers through your flex, and then like 1 or 2 quality bench options. So if your league is 2 wide receivers, 2 flexes, you probably want, 4 wide receivers, and then at least 1 or 2 more that you feel comfortable playing, because you're trying to hit on these running backs. You're kind of expecting that you're going to hit on these elite ceiling backs. The wide receivers in the mid rounds, if you're drafting, 5, 6, the odds of you missing on 1 or 2 isn't too crazy. Plus, there's going to be bye weeks, injuries, all of that. In general, with double hero RB, you're going to be avoiding the running back dead zone. So you take your 2 guys in the first 3, 4 rounds, and you're probably not going to be picking another running back until round 9, maybe round 10. You're typically avoiding like that round 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 area. And I also think this strategy gives you some flexibility to snag an elite quarterback or tight end. It's probably going to be tough to snag both, right? To get like a, Lamar, Justin Fields type, and then also get, a Kittle, a Waller, one of those guys. It's probably going to be tough to snag both because your wide receivers are going to suffer. But I do think you're kind of opened up to go and get an elite quarterback or a tight end if the value falls to you. And then before we jump into the mock drafts, I do just want to preface by saying that you should never go into a draft locked into a specific strategy. Like I would never say, go hero RB regardless. Like, no matter what, you have to use this strategy because, the board can go different ways, players can fall to you, and you don't want to restrict yourself. But I do think knowing how to implement all the different strategies is important because you go through your first 2, 3, 4 rounds. You can kind of take a look at your team, and then you can execute these strategies throughout the rest of your draft, whether it's double hero RB, hero RB, zero RB. These are all different strategies that you can kind of lock into after the first few rounds of your draft. But I will say that double hero RB has been the strategy that I've used most this offseason, especially if you're playing on platforms like ESPN or Yahoo. I just think the way those drafts kind of play out fits really well for the double hero RB draft strategy. But now I'm going to be diving into 5 different mock drafts from 5 different pick positions, just kind of showing you a variety of different double hero RB drafts. There's going to be some variance here. We're going to have some PPR mock drafts, some half-point PPR. Also, it's not like we're going RB in every single one. We've got some variance in terms of how we start off the drafts. So let's jump into the first one. This is going to be from the 2nd pick, and this is going to be a PPR league. We're going 2 running backs starting, 2 wide receivers, and then 2 flex spots. And then obviously 1 quarterback and 1 tight end. And then it looks like we've got 5 bench slots in this one. So from the 102, this is a spot where you could go, if Jefferson's going 101, you could go running back, you could go wide receiver. Typically, I'd be going Jamar Chase, but based on the platform, you could talk me into Christian McCaffrey, if you think the running back position is going to dry up. Plus, I know a lot of you out there would probably rather snag your running back here at the 102. So we go Christian McCaffrey here with the 2nd overall pick. Then we get to the 2nd round, and I could go running back or I could go wide receiver here. This is a spot where I like the value on Jalen Waddle. I just have him ranked straight up, over guys like Josh Jacobs, Chris Olave, and Breece Hall. So he was going to be my best player available at that price. But then we get to the third round, and you can see we didn't start off running back, but we can still execute a hero RB draft here. So I go Breece Hall in the third round. Now, maybe some of you guys don't love Breece Hall just based on, the potential injury concerns, and I get it. But I do think if Breece Hall is healthy, he is going to be a high ceiling running back, especially for like the second half of the season. And I do think he's someone that you could use here in a double hero RB build. So he is going to be my second running back. We've got the 2 running backs through, 3, maybe 4 rounds, but we didn't need a falling guy in the 4th. So then we go into the 4th round, and I really like the value on late 4th round Justin Fields. I've talked about this in a lot of videos, but if you've got like Mahomes, Hurts, and Allen all being picked within, the first 3.5 rounds, if you're getting Justin Fields at the 4-5 turn, I think that's a really, really nice value. But now we haven't gone super wide receiver heavy, so now we kind of got to lock in on the wide receiver position. We want wide receivers through the flex plus, 1 or 2 spots ideally. So we go Christian Watson, Mike Williams, Mike Evans in back-to-back-to-back rounds. You're going to see in these mock drafts, really like the value on Mike Williams. I think I might have him in every single one of these mocks. But so that is going to give us wide receivers through, our starting lineup at this point. We've got 2 at the wide receiver position and then 2 in our flex spot. Now, this is typically not a spot in the 8th round where I would go running back, but this is, kind of what I talked about. We don't want to be locked into a specific strategy. We still want to be flexible. If James Cook is going to be available in the late 8th round, I'm just going to have to take him there. Like, I just can't pass up on that value. I actually also think it works really well with our start because say Breece Hall isn't ready to go week 1, or he's not 100% week 1, then we honestly have a nice option to kind of slide into that RB2 spot. So I wouldn't say this is like your super typical double hero RB build just because I wouldn't typically go, round 8 running back. But like I said, if the value is there, we got to take it. We can't get tunnel visioned in on one specific strategy or like the specific guidelines of a draft strategy. But now we got to get back on the wide receiver position. We go Zay Flowers, Jameson Williams. I like Flowers there as the wide receiver 5. Obviously, JMO as wide receiver 6 being suspended. He's not going to help us early on in the season, but, I think it's fine. And then we did have to punt the tight end position. That's pretty much the price you're going to pay for, going 8th round running back or just going crazy heavy at the wide receiver position. We got an elite quarterback, so kind of had to punt the tight end position. I snagged Tyler Higbee, who I really like as a late round option if Dalton Kincaid isn't available. And then we get Sam Laporta as our tight end too. And then we just snag one more running back, Jaylen Warren, as like a handcuff guy who could kind of emerge based on an injury, or who knows what happens with that Steelers backfield. So that's going to be a double hero RB draft from the 2nd overall pick. I like the way this one played out. I do like those top 2 running backs. I think our wide receivers are solid. We got the elite quarterback. Tight end position is lacking, but I do think our bench is decent. And I did like how I could kind of point out early on how you can pivot away from like the typical guidelines of a double hero RB strategy. You never want to be so locked in that you're passing up on great value. Now, the next draft is also going to be PPR. We're going to be drafting from the 4th overall pick. It's the same roster setup. This one has, kicker defense. Doesn't really matter for this video, but that's just the mock I joined. So from the 104, I will say we got Justin Jefferson here. I think this is going to happen in a very, very small percentage of leagues, but I do think it's possible, you get 2 running backs early on, or even if you get 2 wide receivers early on, this could still be a wide receiver pick. So, Jefferson probably not super likely here consistently, but you could throw in Kupp, you could throw in Tyreek Hill, and I still think this is a pretty solid draft. So we go wide receiver in the 1st round, and you can still turn these types of drafts into double hero RB. So we get Tony Pollard in the 2nd. Really like the value on Pollard. You can see the draft kind of went wide receiver heavy, so you didn't have an Amon-Ra available. Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle were gone. I would still go Pollard over Wilson and Waddle, but so I do like the pick of Pollard there in the 2nd round. And then we get to the 3rd round, and you can see we had a falling Breece Hall and a falling Ramondre Stevenson. If you're going to give me round 3 Ramondre, I'm just going to have to take it. We've kind of heard some reports out of Patriot camp that they don't want to bring in a running back like Dalvin Cook, who, wants a huge workload. They're probably going to bring in a veteran like a Zeke or Leonard Fournette. That makes me a lot less concerned about Ramondre's workload and his overall fantasy ceiling. So I do think if they do not bring in Dalvin Cook, he will continue to be a nice fantasy RB1 option. So we go those back-to-back running backs. We get our 2 through 3/4 rounds, starting off with Jefferson, Tony Pollard, and Ramondre Stevenson. This was actually another draft where we snagged Justin Fields. If the wide receivers like Amari Cooper, Calvin Ridley, Keenan Allen, if those guys aren't going to be available in the 4th round, I'm totally cool taking a guy like Justin Fields because I don't want to reach on these wide receivers like McLaurin, Drake London, because players in the same tier are going to be available to us in the 5th round, maybe even the 6th round. So we go Justin Fields, and then I thought it would be kind of cool in the 5th round to stack Fields with DJ Moore. So this is where we start to hammer the wide receiver position. We go DJ Moore in the 5th round. Then we go Mike Williams again in the 6th round. We go Marquise Brown in the 7th. And then Brandon Cooks in the 8th. So far, looking at our starting lineup, we do not have a tight end yet. We've got wide receivers through the flex, plus one solid bench option in Brandon Cooks. So I thought this was a spot where we could take a tight end. You know, if you're going to give me 9th round David Njoku, I'll take it. Especially he was like the last guy available of that Freiermuth Ingram tier where you kind of have a fall off. So I was cool taking him in the 9th round. We didn't get 2 wide receivers, on the bench that we love, but I think that's fine. We go round 10, Damian Harris to get our RB3. Then we go Jacoby Myers in round 11, who I think could be decent. Then we get Jaylen Warren as our running back 4. And then we snag Nico Collins as like a depth wide receiver. It looks like he probably will be the wide receiver 1 for the Texans. And then kicker, Younghoe Koo. Defense, Seahawks. Don't really pay a ton of attention to that. But again, looking at this team, we get the 2 running backs. We get them in round 2 and round 3, though, which I think kind of makes this team look nice because we still have that elite wide receiver 1, whether it's Justin Jefferson or Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp. I think this team is solid regardless. And then we've got some really nice wide receiver depth because you have a high-end wide receiver 1. Then you've got guys like DJ Moore, Mike Williams, who I think Mike Williams is a wide receiver 2. I think DJ Moore is like a fringe wide receiver 2. Marquise Brown, strong wide receiver 3. And then if Brandon Cooks is your 5th best wide receiver, I do think you're in a pretty solid spot. And then even our running backs, I think Damian Harris is someone who could have week-to-week value. And then Jaylen Warren, I think, is a very nice handcuff option. He's definitely a handcuff I'm kind of consistently targeting. So that is going to be the 2nd draft. Now moving into the 3rd one, this is going to be from pick 7. This is also PPR. The last 2 are going to be a half-point PPR. And this was a spot where we started off running back. I believe that's the first mock draft that we've done that in so far. So I go Bijan Robinson at the 107. Once again, you could have gone Cooper Kupp. He was available. Pretty much just preference at that point. So I go Bijan Robinson at the 107. Then I go with Jonathan Taylor in the 2nd round. If I'm going to get a falling Jonathan Taylor because of a potential, contract holdout, trade, whatever it is, I'm willing to take him in the mid-2nd round for sure. So we get those 2 stud running backs back-to-back. These are both guys that have very high ceilings. Jonathan Taylor has been a running back 1 in his career. Bijan Robinson, he's my running back 2. I think he's going to step in and be a high-end running back 1 from day 1. So I really like this start, getting 2 stud wide receivers. While you've got other people drafting like the wide receiver 11, I'm getting a guy who's probably at worst like a top 7 running back or 2 top 7 running backs. So I like that start. Then I like our picks in round 3 and round 4. We go double wide receiver. We get Calvin Ridley and Amari Cooper. I think this start through 3 rounds is very fun because for me, Calvin Ridley is like right on the outside of the top 12 wide receivers looking in. And then Amari Cooper to me is like a mid-tier wide receiver too. Then in the 5th round, I went with Justin Herbert. Was hoping Fields would fall to us. He went at the 505, but I'm totally cool with round 5 Justin Herbert. If you're going to give me, Herbert, who I'd consider at the 4-5 turn, then I'll definitely take him in the mid-5th. What I found in these mock drafts is I do like going early quarterback. I just don't like getting one of the first 3. So I don't love spending a 2nd or 3rd round pick on Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, or Josh Allen. But if you're going to give me, Justin Herbert, Justin Fields, even Lamar Jackson at value, I will definitely take it. So we get that elite quarterback. Then we get 2 more wide receivers, Mike Williams in the 6th, once again, and then Mike Evans in the 7th. So through 7 rounds, I really love this team. We've got 2 running backs that I think are mid-tier RB1s or better. We've got 2 solid wide receivers that I think are wide receiver 2s. Mike Williams, I also think, is a wide receiver 2. And then Mike Evans as your wide receiver 4 when you already have an elite quarterback and 2 elite running backs. totally cool with that. Then we go David Njoku in round 8 here. And I think I went a little bit off the rails here from this point on. It's not that I dislike the picks, but I think we kind of strayed away from the double hero RB draft strategy. And I don't know if it led to like crazy values at other positions. So I get David Njoku in the 8th round. I probably could have waited and just gone super late round tight end, but we get him in round 8. Then in round 9, I like the value on Charbonnet. This probably could have been like a Zay Flowers pick or an Elijah Moore pick. I think if I had to go back, I probably would make that swap. We get Rashad Bateman in round 10. Then I go Elijah Mitchell in round 11. And I think that's the point where I realized like, might have messed up there, because do I love Rashad Bateman as like my 5th wide receiver? Maybe. He's barely been practicing. I don't know if he has been practicing. So I don't love that. I probably, if I could go back, I would have drafted like an Elijah Moore over Zach Charbonnet, but it is what it is. I also didn't realize that this was only a 3 bench mock draft, so we didn't get a ton of depth there. McPherson, Seahawks at the kicker defense spot. So basically, I really like this draft through pretty much round 7. I think it's probably my favorite draft through round 7. Round 8 on, I think I made some mistakes, but still overall, I think it's a pretty solid team. Now, shifting into the next mock draft, this is going to be from the 9th overall pick, and this is going to be a half-point PPR league. So we end up going with Stephon Diggs in the 1st round at the 109. I think you could argue for some of the running backs here, Chubb, Barkley, whoever you want. I'll go with Stephon Diggs. He's going to be a player that I do have as my 8th overall guy. So if I'm getting him at the 109, I'm fine with it. In round 2, I ended up going with Tony Pollard. He's someone that I'm going to have a lot of shares of. If he's going mid to late 2nd round, I'm totally cool drafting him. You could have gone with the Derrick Henry. Looks like he was available here. I prefer Tony Pollard, but really whatever you want in that spot. And then we get Jahmyr Gibbs at the 309, who I really like as a value in that 3rd round or the 4th round. So I like the start here. We get an elite wide receiver. We also get Tony Pollard and Jahmyr Gibbs. So we have those 2 running backs through 3, 4 rounds, however you want to look at it. Then we get Calvin Ridley in the 4th round. And then I did something that I don't typically do. I'm not super in on TJ Hawkinson. Like, I have him ranked as my tight end 3, but in terms of where I have him versus ADP of all the positions, I'm lower than consensus, so I really don't get a lot of shares of TJ Hawkinson. Typically, you see him going at like the 4-5 turn. I'm not willing to pay that price, but at the 509, I'll buy in on him there. So I go TJ Hawkinson. This is one of the drafts where we didn't get an elite quarterback, but instead we got a higher end tight end. But then we got to go back to hammering the wide receiver position. So I go round 6, Mike Williams, like clockwork. Then I get some younger options. We go 3 straight rookies, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Jordan Addison, and then Quentin Johnston. Maybe that's not a great look early on in the season, but I like the outlook of all 3 of those dudes throughout the season. So at this point, we have wide receivers through the flex plus 2 quality options on the bench. So this is probably closest to like the textbook double hero RB draft strategy. In round 10, I end up snagging a running back. At this point, if I'm getting one of these later round quarterbacks, I don't want to be the first guy to make that pick. So I'll kind of wait and let the guys like Kirk Cousins go in round 9, Tua go in round 8, and then I'll just sit back and I'll snag a guy like Daniel Jones in round 11, who I really like as like my favorite late round option. Then we get another wide receiver in Sky Moore. Who knows how that Chiefs wide receiver room shakes out. And then one more bench running back in Tajay Spears as like a potential Derrick Henry handcuff. So I do like the way this one played out. Let me know what you guys think about that Hawkinson pick. I do feel like I'm a little low on him, but I feel like mid-late 5th round, I think it kind of makes sense to draft him here. We get the young wide receivers. We got the 2 running backs early on. Overall, I think a pretty solid draft from the 9 spot. Also from a draft spot that I don't typically love. I think the 9 spot can get a little rough just because you don't get one of those elite options like a Cooper Kupp, a Tyreek Hill. Pollard's probably available in that same spot. And then Jahmyr Gibbs is also probably available like early 3rd round. But, even though it's a tough spot, I think the draft turned out solid. Now shifting into the final mock draft, this is going to be from pick 11. We're going to be going half-point PPR. And this was a draft that we started off running back, back-to-back. I think this 1-2 turn is interesting. I think you could build some 0 RB teams here. You could go hero RB. You could go in a lot of different directions. You can start off CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra. You can also start off like I did, Nick Chubb, Jonathan Taylor here at the 111 and the 202. So we get those 2 stud running backs early on. Then from rounds 3 through 5, we hit the wide receiver position, go Calvin Ridley, Amari Cooper, and Mike Williams. Going to have a lot of shares of all 3 of those dudes. Then in the 6th round, I don't typically go with Trevor Lawrence. I think sometimes his ADP gets pushed up, but we had Calvin Ridley on the team, so I'm cool stacking him, getting a, mid-round quarterback pick. So we go Trevor Lawrence in the 6th round, not getting any 6th round Travis Kelce. And then in the 7th, we go back to the wide receiver position with Deontay Johnson. I didn't notice, but this was only a 1 flex mock. I kind of went into it thinking it was a 2 flex, but same principle still applies. So we get Deontay Johnson. Then we get another part of this Jaguars offense with Evan Ingram. So we've got kind of a nice stacked Jaguars offense here. I am high on them in general. Then we get another solid wide receiver with Elijah Moore. So now we've got 2 wide receivers on our bench. Even if this was like a 2 flex league, I still think it's solid because you throw Deontay Johnson in one of the flex spots, and then you still have Elijah Moore as a depth on your bench. We get 10th round Damian Harris to be our RB3. We go Jacoby Myers in round 11. Get Tank Bigsby as like a handcuff guy in round 12. And then Tyler Bass and the Patriots for kicker and defense. So I like the way this one played out. I think kind of unique to some of the other teams I built. I like the stack with Lawrence, Calvin Ridley, Evan Ingram. I think our running backs are solid at the top with Nick Chubb, Jonathan Taylor. Fine depth with Damian Harris and Tank Bigsby. And then I like the wide receivers also. Ridley, obviously, I've taken in a lot of these. Mike Williams, I think I took in every one. Amari Cooper, I like in the 3rd round. So if I get him in the 4th, I like the value. And then always in on a guy like Deontay and Elijah Moore. So those are going to be the 5 mock drafts. I think you can kind of see through these different mocks. You can execute double hero RB in a lot of ways, and you don't have to be super locked into it. Like you saw in some of these, it's not like I was sitting there like, I need to take a running back, I need to take a running back, I need a running back round 1 and round 2. You don't need to do that. Even the one from pick 104, right? You start off with an elite wide receiver, and if a double hero RB build kind of falls into your lap, then it's cool, but you don't want to be forcing anything. Over the next week or so, I'm also going to be putting out 0 RB and then hero RB, so stay tuned for those. I feel like once you kind of get a hang of all of them, then you can go into drafts feeling comfortable and not really like locking yourself into one. You go through the first few rounds, you see where the value is, and then you kind of pick one of those and you can kind of carry it out throughout the rest of your draft. So let me know how you guys are feeling about this draft strategy. Do you think you're going to be using it in some of your drafts, or do you think that's the way your drafts are going to play out? Let me know down below. If you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.